we've been a few years into the pandemic, and I guess I want to start off with the question of what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of COVID-19?
Surreal. It feels very much like an event that you read about like in a history book, like a war or even another sort of illness or sickness beforehand, and you think, well, that must have been super crazy. But you don't sit there and you think like, oh, I'm going to live through that or experience what that's like myself. But we can all say very confidently at this point that it's a historical event and we all, in fact, have lived through it. And that's not going to change. And knowing that at some point this is going to be an event that will be a distant one is really surreal.
Are there other moments that come to mind that where you think of the word surreal?
Like in general or related to...
Like in your lifetime? Or is this the one moment?
This is probably like the defining moment. Because generally anything else that I might classify as surreal has been like a joyous occasion, like graduating or seeing my family succeed or anything like that. But this is one where it's just weird all the way around, and the positives and negatives kind of are balancing each other out more than it's distinctly good or bad. It's just very strange.
What are some of the positives that you would draw from this?
So I'm introverted and I get along well with my family, so when we all did go into essentially a lockdown for 3, 4, 5 months, my experience, I think, was radically different than everyone else's because we now had the time, all of us, to stay home, to reorganize our things, and to spend time with each other. And we didn't mind doing that. All of us are fairly introverted. All of us get along well. And so it was like the world was giving us permission, so to speak, that we were allowed to have this time to do that. Mm-hmm. And society wasn't going to be like, well, that's weird, or that's strange, or there was literally no repercussion to it.
Mm. Yeah, I think in modern society, right, it's the whole idea of people in our age to be with parents. It's even now, I think it's becoming more and more normal, but...
I think, ironically, COVID might have made it more normal.
Yeah.
That the financial hardships, the job hardships, and everything it put on created the idea that, like, okay, falling back on family isn't bad. But I was already there, and so it turned from being this almost, like, frowned upon thing to, like, the new norm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is there anything that... Because I think that you've always had a good connection with your family. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you guys did differently or new in being in this space?
The one thing...
more of...
I mean, apart from, like, really intense moments of, like, I love you so much, but you've been grocery shopping, and if you get me sick or you don't wipe down those groceries in, like, the first few months, because, you know, love only extends so far, and my brother's very much cautious and aware of his health. Honestly, the close proximity, and we got along well, but we still also had to learn how to navigate always being with each other. Just because we didn't mind it didn't mean that, like... It didn't present its own hardships. We faced it well and cheerfully because we like each other, which was a bonus. But it was like, oh, you're home all the time now, and so I can't just play a video or something out loud. I can't listen to this, or I can't do work this way because you're also doing work or a task or something, and it would be distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we talked about the positivity of, like, being with family and you being able to do that, right? What is, like, the biggest negative thing that you kind of see or experienced out of this?
Other than the overall scare to, like, health and wellness, because I think everyone felt that, and we were included too. I didn't like seeing how upset and sad all my more extroverted friends and the people I was close to were impacted by this. I was fine, and I was fine sticking to Zoom communication or email or phone calls, but a lot of the people I'm close to do really thrive and love this environment where they go out, they interact, or they're doing something. And very obviously they could not because there was nothing to do and you could not do anything. And so watching them kind of wither, I think is the best way to put it, was really sad because it was like, I don't know how to help you because I'm not experiencing that. And I'm not discrediting their feelings. Like, we're different people, we had different things, and that's fine. But it also meant that I didn't know how to be like, it sounded in poor taste at the time to be like, it'll get better. Because it sure didn't feel like things were going to get better. It kind of felt like no one knew what anyone was talking about.
Yeah. I guess at what point were you able to see your friends?
It was... I have a group of friends. We all went to high school together, and they live down the road from me, maybe about a 7-minute walk, like literally walking distance. I didn't even get to see them or feel comfortable seeing them until, golly, well over a year into everything. It was maybe a year and 3 months.
Wow.
Because February of 2020 was the last time I saw one of them. We went and we saw a movie for Valentine's Day. And we hit March. Was the shutdown of everything. And it was, I think, spring or something of the next year by the time I saw her again.
Did you feel a difference in your relationship?
No, because it wasn't like we had stopped seeing each other or stopped being friends due to personal reasons, like a difference in morals, a difference in belief, or even in like time scheduling. It was like, it's just not safe or conducive to do so, especially because I have a family member that works in the medical field. She herself worked in the medical field. Her mother was in an at-risk category. There was so much going on that it was like, we're not going to tempt fate in a way. Not when we were very fortunate in this day and age to have other ways to communicate, even if it wasn't in person.
I think that that's a really strong relationship, because when I think about, not even just in the pandemic setting, but like when I moved away from my family, who I grew up with, right, like my cousins and who lived next door to me, and moved to a different state, it did shift our relationship. I wouldn't say that it's like, it's not negative, but there was a more distance.
Yeah.
So it definitely changed, but it sounds like you kind of kept that relationship in the same way that it was. So did you guys Zoom? Did you guys do some sort of...
We've been part of the same like Facebook group chat since high school, and we message in that almost daily, honestly. And then everything else was like FaceTiming or virtually playing a game together or something. Zoom was used a handful of times. Discord was used a handful of times. It was interesting because they are friends that I've always had access to, for lack of a better way to put that. Like living 7 minutes away, it was totally common for like an hour beforehand being like, hey, I'm free right now. Are you free? Do you mind if I come over in the next hour or so? And being like, yeah, sure, fine. And to suddenly not just be able to do that after literal years of doing that. It's back to that surreal sort of thing, the like, this is weird.
It also sounds like you have a very strong, secure like relationships, or like just people being there for you, or just in just having people there. So it doesn't seem like you experienced the isolation.
I think I was very fortunate like I said, my family was there the whole time and we did like each other, but I did have friends that I could reach out and stay in contact with, and our generation, I would say, is tech savvy enough that we didn't face the hardships of like, well, how would you do this via phone? How would you do this via Zoom? Like, how do you use this? It was just, we played with the technology for a little bit, went, oh, okay, this is how it works, and went from there.
So now you had people, whether that was like at your house, right? And so it's physically present, and also having the relationships with people through digital formats. But then what was it like when like you did have to face out the world? What was your personal experience of like having to go to the grocery store or having to run errands that needed to get done?
It depended a little bit on the experience. So like we were in lockdown, but like it was enforced, but it wasn't like we could leave the house to walk around. I live in an HOA, like in the neighborhood, and I would have to walk the dog because the dog didn't cease having needs because the world was a little bit on fire. But it was for personal tiny things like that. And I guess even errands, it was jarring to walk around and see how much of everything was like a ghost town. Like there weren't people on the streets, people weren't lingering in the supermarket. We live in the South. It's really common courtesy to like strike up a casual conversation in the supermarket and be like, "How are you doing? You weren't doing that." No one was doing that. Everyone was head down, tight walking. It looked like a college campus, like the week of finals, with this perpetually stressed and really tense atmosphere. And no one's looking at each other, and no one's trying to be friendly. We're trying to get from point A to point B with as little human contact as possible.
Yes, I definitely saw that. So was there ever a moment where you felt the need to step in to help someone?
In what regard?
Anything that... I think like during any point during the pandemic, right? Obviously you had to do that for work purposes at some point.
Yes.
But if you saw, like, I don't know, if you went for like a stroll in the park, right? And I don't know, like a dog got loose and you needed to, I don't know, would
jump in or assist.
Right.
Yeah, it was minor things. I thought maybe you were talking about like a lot of people knew those who were older or those who couldn't leave and needed assistance with groceries. I don't really have anyone in my family or in my social circle that is like that. But I would have helped if they needed it, or if something had happened, like someone's kid got lost or someone's dog crossed my path and I could have stopped it. Like, I wouldn't have not acted. I just would have sanitized deeply and thoroughly afterwards.
Yes. I don't know what to ask you.
You're doing that eyebrow thing again.
Has the pandemic at all changed your normal routine? Did you...
Other than my lovely new face accessory? So, I've gotten in the terrible habit of making like faces behind the mask because no one can see it, and eventually, if we ever reach a point again where that's going to change, that's going to be a habit that's fun to break. But in terms of routine, I guess, it's more that I'm like hyper aware. Like, I think we've all heard growing up in a health class, like, oh, people cough or do this, and like, these are the dirtiest surfaces in a work building or a home or whatever, and you kind of shrug it off because, again, it's like, yeah, we know. Well, now I feel like I really know, and I'm acutely aware of, like, that person coughed and didn't cover their mouth. That's super gross. That little kid just licked the carpet. That's super gross. Or, like, what have I touched? Like, just being aware in the grocery store that, like, people have probably touched these products before me. Like, browsing on the shelves or even the worker stocking it. And, like, just because something is pre-packaged, you can't assume things are clean, pristine, or in the perfect way. Mm-hmm. So in a weird way, being more of a germaphobe, or I guess just more aware.
More cautious.
Yeah.
For sure. And more, like, just looking out for those little things that maybe you would have...
Because it used to be a struggle, too. I would get home from work and my mother would be like, go wash your hands. The first thing I want you to do is go wash your hands. And prior to 3 years ago, I would do it, but I would be grumbling like, this is so stupid. What is the need of this? Like, what could I have possibly done? And now she doesn't have to tell me because I'm like, I've been out in public. I've got to go wash my hands before I do anything. Because we spent the last 3 years playing that game.
So what was the worst part for you specifically? What was the worst part during our years in the pandemic?
That lack of information. Or not even a lack of information, it was the perpetually changing information. Mm-hmm. And it was like what was true one week wasn't true the next. The restrictions that were in place one week weren't in place the next. This is how the vaccine works. Well, no, it's not. Well, this is the vaccine side effects. Well, no, it's not. And it was like, I know we all want information, and I know we all want some relief and closure and someone to say, like, it's going to be okay. We want that's something to hold on to. But for me, this constant, like, yes, no, reneging on things was more anxiety-inducing than just someone saying, we don't know right now. Because no one knew right now. No one was going to, like, judge them for not knowing. But I did start to judge them when they were like, no, we promise it's this. And then 2 months later it was, okay, no, it's this, but we promise that. You can only promise things so many times before someone starts to really doubt the information you're giving them.
Do you think that the government or, agencies, organizations could have done a better job of, I guess, how could they have done a better job at providing that information?
I think what I can say is that it's become very clear at this point that for an emergency level situation like this, there was no plan in place. And that's neither a good thing nor a bad thing at this point. It is simply a thing. That being said, it's one of those things like a car accident. It will never happen to me. Well, it did. Now you have to start planning for the future. And even if you never have to use it again, and God hoping we never have to use it again, you have to have something in place. You have to have a protocol or a system or something, and not just, well, this state can do this and this state can do this and this is the tentative timeline, but maybe it'll be extended. I don't need concrete things, but an overview or something for the future would be reassuring to have, to know, like, we've learned something from this and it wasn't just 3 very chaotic and messy years.
So you mentioned that your mom works in the medical field.
She does, yes.
Do you recall a specific, like, story, or what was the atmosphere like for you, like, seeing your mom go out into the medical field?
So my mother is a laboratory technician, which is a fancy way of saying she is the one who is taking the blood and examining it and getting the results for blood levels, for everything, and determining the tests. So she very rarely had face-to-face interaction with patients or anyone who might be sick other than the medical staff themselves. So that was honestly kind of a relief, knowing that she was dealing only with the samples and not with, like, not to say a sample isn't a live specimen, but not like a direct transmission. Like, a sample isn't going to cough at her, essentially, was what we were warring with in our mind. But I do remember her talking about it leading up even into the months, like, man, we've been getting a lot of requests for, like, the cases and for everything. And she's always been notorious about staying clean, making sure work clothes stay very separate from everything, taking them off as soon as she got home. She's very well trained in that regard as a medical professional. But it got to the point where it was like maybe 5 or 6 tests a day, and then it became 30 tests a week, and then it easily became 70 plus tests a day. And it would be nothing but COVID test, COVID test, COVID test. And the supplies ran out, and it was a mess. The hospital staff was stretched thin. She escaped the brunt of it doing only lab work, but that didn't mean that the doctors and the nurses weren't spread thin, which made getting the lab work hard. It was a rough 3 years to be in the medical field.
Yeah.
It was a rough 3 years in a field that is already pretty notorious for being fast-paced and demanding of its workers. Add a pandemic on top of that. It's not fun.
So what were you doing at the time?
At that time, it was a mix of things. I worked at a green space for several years, and I had that job at the start of it all. The green space itself closed when everything closed down because it was viewed as a non-essential place. It was basically like a nature preserve, and they couldn't warrant contact in that kind of area where it just wasn't as necessary. So for about 6 months, maybe less than that, 4 to 6, I don't remember at this point because the last 3 years have blended together, I was actually on unemployment. And I was just biding my time because I was like, well, this isn't a great time to do anything, but I did have to work again. So we did unemployment for about 4 months or so, and then I got a job at a veterinary clinic, which was also a surreal thing because that's about as close to medicine as I was ever going to get, like my mother. And even that, like, that's a business where you're assuming people are going in and they're being with their animals during the whole thing, and that's just not how it was. It was, you're calling ahead for appointments, you're calling us when you get there, you're wearing a mask to meet with the vet techs, the animal is coming inside, but you're not coming inside. The contact with everything was via phone. Even, like, the vet's conversations with them was done over the phone. And if you think it's hard to deliver the news, like, oh, well, I'm very sorry, but Skippy has cancer in person, try softening that over the phone. You can't. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have to do. But what choice did we have?
Yeah. So how long were you there for?
I worked there for about a year. And we were just getting to the point at the end of me working there where they were changing the rules. It still wasn't everyone was let inside. Grooming appointments weren't let inside. Any euthanasias obviously were let in because we weren't heartless. But I think if it was like a routine medical visit, something that should be super fast, I think they called them wellness exams. And it's, your blood work, your heart rate, we're just making sure Skippy's doing fine. Then they could come in. But it would be sanitizing the rooms in between. But right at the end of that, they were starting, and then I actually started here. And that was weird too, because it was like right in the middle of a phase shift, kind of, because by the time I started, we still had the greeter position, which was essentially someone at the front door directing traffic to kind of encourage people to get where they needed to be as fast as possible and not linger in the building. We didn't even have half of our self-seating out at that point. So I experienced a little bit of everything from facing unemployment to the pandemic to working in a really restricted way from what a job would be to like almost a return to normalcy in a work environment. Just across 3 separate jobs.
So the green space, the library, and the veterinary.
The vet clinic.
The vet clinic, yes. Okay. So you mentioned being in the unemployment for a little bit. What was that process and experience like?
It is the hardest thing in the world. I have done applications for personal loans. I have done applications for scholarships. I have done school applications. I have done job applications. I've done taxes. The hardest thing in the world is convincing the government that you don't have a job and can you please give me money. That form, filling out that form and trying to get it to process. And perhaps I'm being unfair because half the world was trying to fill out the form at that time. And even the best website runs into problems. I get that. I do. I really do. But we're going to go back to if we're going to have a pandemic and the government is going to do this, please have a plan in place before you're like, just go do it. It's fine. Don't think about it. Just do it. I have a vivid memory of filling out unemployment and everything was right. I checked everything and it wouldn't accept it. And I wasn't missing a field. I wasn't anything. And I remember thinking, okay, out of a petty fit of spite, I changed gender from female to would prefer not to answer or something like that. Click submit again and it went, yep, okay, that's good. And then I remember distinctly having to walk away and outside and scream because my brother found me there and this was 40 minutes into trying to get this form to submit. And something as arbitrary as that, and it was like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. It was beyond frustrating. I can't begin to imagine how much more difficult that would have been for someone who wasn't tech savvy like I was. Matter of fact, I do know a coworker from the green space called me and said, can I ask you for a huge favor? And I said, sure, Ken, what's up? And he went, can you please come over? And can you fill this form out for me? He's like, because I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. So I said, sure, and he lived like an hour from me. It was not like a hop down the street. did go to see Ken. I was filling stuff out and I was trying to teach him at the same time, because it's personal information they ask you for. It's birthdays, it's bank statements, it's social securities. And he was just like, here you go. Here's all my info to be me. And I was like, Ken, if I was any worse of a person, you can't just do this. But I remember I had to set it up for him. I had to set up the account. I had to fill out the form. I had to find our employer's paperwork saying that we had it. I had to connect it to his bank for a direct deposit. So I guess in that sense, yes, I actually did help someone in the pandemic. I just forgot that I'd done that.
Wow, yeah, for sure.
That was a big
impact. So, and you know, I don't even know if I can file for unemployment ever, but so I don't even know really like what the first, like I don't even know where you would go, but.
You file on state level, so you file with the state. There is a form that it fills out. They reach out to your previous employer or whoever and verify with them. And for us, we did happen to have it on file. Our green space job did guarantee that we had that. That was nice. And then from there, it was connecting everything. And then you had to sign like an affidavit that you would try to be finding employment in the whole time, because they're not expecting you to sit on it. But no one was hiring at that point. There were no jobs to be had, so they were admittedly more lax about it. And then I think it was, I don't remember if it was weekly or bi-weekly, but money would just show up in my account. And it was more than I was getting paid at the time. It was, a lot of people on unemployment, I think, discovered that the payout from that was higher than the crummy little minimum wage jobs we were making. Because I was making more on unemployment than I was making working.
And how long did they give you to find a job, or how long did you have to?
It went indefinitely, and I don't know, because I've never had to file for unemployment in a situation that was an emergency relief, but they were going almost pretty much indefinitely.
So it wasn't something that you had to like reapply for every so often?
No. I did. Now that you said that, I think maybe every week that I wanted it. I did want my money. But every week that I was filing for it, I had to go on and be like, hey, still don't have a job. Yeah, I attested that. Like, nothing's changed. Here's all this. And then the week that I was hired by the vet clinic and everything changed, I went on and I was like, hey, we can cancel everything. Like, you don't need to do anything anymore. Because I was always really concerned that they were going to keep paying me and I was going to have to fight them to stop paying me, because it would be fraudulent to be claiming unemployment and working.
Yeah.
But thankfully we never hit that point.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of sort of different.
I thought what I hated the most every year was filling out that FAFSA form while going through education. Turns out it's unemployment. It's hard to be poor, is what I think all of us learned. It's not a system conducive to helping those who need it. Especially because, like, I don't even know if there was a Spanish option or anything. Like, I'm a native English speaker, and the form was in English because that's the predominant language. But, I don't even know how you would go through that not having tech skills, not speaking English. Yeah. I don't think you could.
And, like, if you don't even know, like, where to go, then it's like, what do you do?
And on top of the fact of not even, like, knowing where to go, who was open to help at this point in time?
Yeah. So I feel like you experience different sort of, like, even for yourself, you were in different spaces that you experienced the pandemic. Like, going from a job to jobless to unemployment, coming back into the job, finishing up your degree and coming
I can divide it that year, 2020, is very clearly divided into, like, sections for me. And it was, okay, well, at the start of the year, I finished my degree and I started kind of an internship volunteer base with the library. And then everything shut down and I went on unemployment. And then I had another job, a really restricted job, that just as things were changing, that job ended. Like, it's a year sectioned, not so much by where we were with with COVID and with the vaccine and with the case numbers, but, like, where was I by that point, by chunks in the year?
Yeah, so I guess the trajectory of how we go from, or like graduating school into our actual career, even that was a unique experience for you.
Like the job market isn't hard enough to go straight from school to trying to find employment. I have lucked into my job, and I'm going to hold on to it with my little hands for as long as I can. But like, oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure half of my success at getting a job was only due to like familiarity with the changing job market and being able to adapt, because everyone suddenly was having to do virtual interviews and not in person, and they were willing to take anyone who could speak, and it became a crucial skill to be able to use technology and to be able to communicate pretty complex things over the phone. When most buildings weren't allowing people inside and everything was being done through a website or through a phone service.
Were any of your job interview questions regarding that specifically?
They touched on customer service. That much was true. And the vet clinic didn't test as much on that, because I think they themselves were still trying to define, like, how does customer service translate over the phone in such a business that is face-to-face? I think when I interviewed for my position with CML, they were more focused on that because, one, it had been longer and they were kind of more aware of the unique challenges that came with that. And two, a lot of the business itself is phone conversation with customers who necessarily can't get to the buildings or have access to the resource. Because, like, for the most part, people at the vet clinic were people who were fairly well off and had the extra income to support an animal. That's not necessarily the case with the customers we see here daily. Some of them genuinely don't have the additional outside resources to do anything like that. And so, just different mindsets and being aware of the customer base, I think, was the discrepancy in the questions.
Okay, so now having thought about, like, everything that you experienced and sort of the different transitions in your life during these years, do you feel that the pandemic has shaped you in a specific way or changed you in a specific way to, like, just the core of who you are, or has it highlighted certain aspects of you? I know you talked about the sort of introversion piece of it, but is there anything else?
I mean, I've been pretty confident in who I am and what I believe in and how I act and how I behave, the standards I hold myself to, for a while. I think COVID kind of reinforced that who I thought I was really is who I am, and that I know myself very well, and I know what my limits are, and I know what I enjoy and what I don't, and I know what I can take and what I can't. And it just reinforced that, like, no, you were right, and you should stick to knowing that about yourself, because you've got it pretty figured out. That being said, I do think it kind of inspired this, like, I fluctuate frequently between, like, real sympathy for humankind and real coldness for humankind. Because, like, we all remember, right? The people who first were like, this is a hoax, this is nuts. And then the people who fought tooth and nail on the mask thing, and it was like, you're being brainwashed and all that. And it was really, really hard to love humanity when the vocal minority was acting that way. And it was like, newsflash, you're not the only ones disgruntled, upset, and suffering right now. But you sure are being the loudest and most obnoxious about it. And so my already fairly limited sympathy and empathy for mankind continued to eke away. I feel like maybe I'm probably more callous of a person now, having been through that, because how many people, and this is obviously not everyone, but how many people purposefully put themselves in a situation where they were at risk, or someone endangered someone highly at risk through foolish actions? I got no time for foolish actions. I'm tired. We're all tired. And I need people making us more tired.
Yeah, I get it. And so now that I mean, we're still seeing ripple effects of the pandemic. And sometimes it's the core of it as well, right? Still. We're experiencing like sort of highs and lows and,
Yeah.
you know, going through waves with it. But what do you kind of see or hope to see in the future as we move more away from the initial...
We learned how to do a lot of things in a lot of different ways during the pandemic. Education is probably going to be the one that comes the first to my mind. And we learned that online education can be just as valid and as good as in-person education. And that kind of education allows more people, non-traditional students who maybe can't afford to live on dorms and campuses for a college level, kids with disabilities in a high school or middle school setting, to still engage with and have access to education. I think we learned a lot of different ways that it can be applied that necessarily shouldn't go by the wayside. I think we fine-tuned a lot of things when it came to shopping or spending habits, because people had to just be more conscious of what they could buy.